Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm going to call our meeting to order. Good evening. Today is August the 19th. It's 5 o'clock. We're in the Government Services Building in the Commission Chambers, and we're going to call to order our regular meeting of the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners, and I would ask if you would join me in the pledge to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And as we do each and every time, please join us in a moment of silence as we remember all the good things that we have in our lives here in Flagler County, and we think about the first responders here in Flagler County, and also the brave men and women of the United States military that serve us here and abroad. Okay, thank you. In terms of additions and deletions, item 4C will be deleted. 4C1, the Care Connect presentation, will be deleted from our agenda this evening. There's some recent developments that are going to, I guess, change that presentation, so we'll look forward to that presentation at our next meeting. Also, Commissioner Erickson is excused for this evening's meeting, so he won't be with us. Also, another announcement that reminder that our county offices will be closed in observance of Labor Day on Monday, September the 2nd. And we still are looking for some vacancies on some of our boards. And remember, if you're a registered voter, we have citizen volunteer boards and councils. We still have some openings on our contractor review board and our Economic Opportunity Advisory Council. And those positions will remain open until filled. If you are interested or know somebody that might be, please look on our website, which is flaglercounty.org, under Advisory Board vacancies, or you can contact Ms. Mari Davis at 313-4094. And the next upcoming meeting of our commission, again, because Monday the 2nd is Labor Day, our next regular scheduled meeting will be Wednesday, September the 4th, and that'll be our 9 o'clock meeting. Okay, so those are the announcements by the chair. Next up, we have some recognitions and proclamations. Well, I guess no recognitions. We have a proclamation recognizing National Senior Citizens Day. I want to ask Commissioner Hanson if he would read that proclamation for us.
It's appropriate, since I'm a senior citizen, to read this. Proclamation of the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners recognizing August 21st, 2019 as National Senior Citizens Day in Flagler County. Whereas throughout our history, older people have achieved much for our families, our communities, and our country. That remains true today and gives us ample reason this year to reserve a special day in honor of the senior citizens who mean so much to our land. And whereas, with improved health care and more years of productivity, older citizens are reinforcing their historical roles as leaders and as links with our heritage and sense of purpose as individuals and as a nation. Many older people are embarking on second careers, providing younger Americans a fine example of responsibility, resourcefulness, competence, and determination. And more than 48 million senior citizens are serving as volunteers in various programs and projects that benefit every sector of society. Wherever the need exists, older people are making their presence felt for their own good and that of others. And whereas, for all they have achieved throughout life and for all they continue to accomplish, we owe older citizens our thanks and a heartfelt salute. We can best demonstrate our gratitude and esteem by making sure that our communities are good places in which to mature and grow older, places in which older people can participate to the fullest and can find encouragement, acceptance, assistance, and services they need to continue to lead lives of independence and dignity. And whereas the Congress, by House Joint Resolution 138, designated August 21st, 1988 as the first National Senior Citizens Day, and authorized and requested the President to issue a proclamation in observance of this event. And whereas Ronald Reagan, President of the United States of America, proclaimed August 21st, 1988 as National Senior Citizens Day and called upon the people of the United States to observe this day with appropriate ceremonies and activities. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners that they hereby declare August 21st, 2019 as National Senior Citizens Day in Flagler County, and ask that all remember the positive contributions senior citizens have made in their communities. Adopted this 19th day of August 2019, attested Tom Bexley, Clerk of the Circuit Court and Comptroller, and signed by Flagler County Board of County Commissioners Chairman Donald T. O'Brien.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Deborah Susswine, and I want to thank you, Chairman O'Brien and Commissioner Hanson, Mullins, and Sullivan, for recognizing this day. I've done this for a few years. I was out of the picture for a couple of years, but I'm back again, so you'll see me again in coming years. I think it's really important that we acknowledge our elders. And in fact, perhaps for your moment of silence in the future, you could also add a good word for the elders in our community who have served as volunteers. They've served in the military. They've served in the various professions that they have participated in. They're a very, very important and ever-growing part of our population. So on behalf of all the elders, and that's a lot of people in this county, I thank you for this proclamation. Yes.
Thank you.
Everybody all ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3, and just a couple more, and that's great. Thank you so very much.
Look for a motion on that proclamation.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the proclamation recognizing August 21st as National Seniors Day.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. That motion carries unanimously. Okay, thank you, commissioners. Moving on to presentations. First up today will be a presentation on some mental health statistics in Flagler County, and Lynette Schott from our school district. And Ms. Schott is Executive Director of Student and Community Engagement, and well known to a lot of us, and appreciate you coming in this afternoon, Lynette. Thank you.
Thank you for having me this evening. And if I may, I'd like to recognize and introduce Mr. John Finelli, who's our Coordinator of Student Supports and Behavior, works closely with us on our mental health initiatives. We also have our school board member, Andy Dance, here, and my husband, who came from Moral Support, and if he hadn't, I wouldn't be able to read anything because I borrowed his glasses. So, mental wellness is something that's near and dear to all of us throughout our entire community for all age groups. What I am going to share with you this evening is specifically how it relates to our students that are with us in our school district. The following Parkland, there were a great number of changes, both legislatively and across school districts internally, with dollars coming to us from our legislature that were specifically allocated to school districts in order to support mental wellness and supports for our students. And the ability with that came the ability to provide a stronger structure that we can provide to our students at that time. So our last year was the first year that legislation was in place, and we received dollars specifically allocated for that. For the 18-19 school year, we received about $386,000 in our school district For this coming school year, the allocation was increased slightly to about $411,000. We were in a very good position moving into this because we have a district and a board that had supported starting to put supports in place for our students in our schools prior to the legislative changes. We were able to add on to that rather than trying to build from scratch, which was extremely important. When our students come into what we call our mental health continuum, they can be referred by anyone that feels they see a need, that they might need some additional supports. That might be one of their peers. It can be a parent. Oftentimes we are that portal through parents coming to us needing assistance to be able to bridge out to resources. It can come from a teacher. It can come from a coach, anyone who feels that they see a need in a student. They come in through our guidance department, and then we are able to assess what level of need we think they have. It's a tiered system. Tier 1, everybody gets certain things. We have positive behavior and intervention supports. We have we started some of the Sandy Hook programs this year, such as It Starts With Hello, See Something, Say Something. Those are available to all of our students. If it's felt that they need a little bit more support, then they go into what we call Tier 2, and that is provided by our in-house people that may be short-term needs and can be handled right there on our campuses, and that's where our staff comes into play. We have made a commitment as a district to put a school psychologist in every single school, and I will tell you that is unheard of in most school districts. We made that commitment prior to this legislation coming into play. The dollars that we received were able to help us add on to that. Our district had already supported that. I am very excited to say that we're able to hire our 9th psychologist, and we now have one in every district, or in every school.
Elementary schools also?
Yes,
Wow.
there is one in all 9 of our traditional schools. We also, so our school psychologists, our guidance counselors will often provide that Tier 2 support. When we have students that need a little bit more support, a little more specific mental health counseling, we refer them, they move up into what we call our Tier 3, and we have an intensive Tier 3 as well. That would be where their services would need the assistance of a licensed mental health counselor and other agencies and supports around that. We also were very lucky that we already had we had 2 licensed mental health counselors in our district prior to this legislation. We chose to use the majority of our dollars to put boots on the ground with our children, and so we added 3 additional mental health counselors last year. So we have a total of 5 in-house in the district. We have we had 1 social worker prior to last year. Last year, we were able to use some of our federal grant dollars from Title IV to add a 2nd social worker. When we sat back and looked at our first year, we realized we needed more, both for reach outs of supports as well as some case management. So in addition to continuing to support the other positions we have put into play, we're adding 2 social workers this year as well. So our stable of internal supports has become quite robust.
So 5 counselors, 2 social workers.
Yes, we have 26 guidance counselors, 9 psychologists, 5 mental health counselors that are licensed, and 4 social workers for this coming year.
Okay. And so like with the counselors, they would have a caseload and
They
float
do.
between the schools, I guess, based on...
They do, yes. And so I'll tell you a little bit about our numbers to give you a picture. We anticipated that we would get a good number of referrals into our mental health continuum. We did not anticipate the numbers we received. We had 683 students that were referred for Tier 2. That's on site. That would be being met by short term by our psychologists, guidance counselors. For Tier 3, we had 615 students that we actually got referrals for Tier 3 with signatures from parents. And when we get to Tier 3, where they need a licensed mental health counselor, we have a criteria of whether we refer them to an outside agency or we try and serve them ourselves. If at all possible, we do work with an outside agency. We have MOUs with 14 different agencies. And that provides that longevity. They can, if they need counseling through the summer, if they need counseling over the holidays, and we simply can't handle the magnitude in-house. 193 of our students that we received those parent signatures for were served by our internal mental health counselors.
All right. Any of the MOUs with agencies in Flagler County?
We have Stuart Marchman is probably our biggest in-house provider. They work with us on providing substance abuse counselor on site through a separate grant that we have. And then we refer out to agencies like ADAPT, Chrysalis, Big Bear, Helping Hand. What our MOUs allow are for their counselors to come on site to us for counseling services. So even if their main offices are housed outside of our geographic county, it allows them to come in and serve our students on site. Those are for those long-term counseling pieces. For crisis intervention, that is where we struggle geographically. So of those 615, 422 went to outside agencies, 193 went to our counselors. We also have 145 we're tracking in our system that actually parents came to us and said, we've already got our children set up with counseling. It's happening outside. It's through our insurance, so they didn't come through us, but we still track it in our system so that we're aware and know, as long as the parent informs us, so that we can provide supports as well in school. And then we had 58 students who entered that continuum through a Baker Act. And I'm sure you're familiar with the Baker Act. That is when an individual is in danger of harming themselves or others, and a decision is made that they need to be receive more in-house therapeutic treatment. And that is usually, our receiving facility is Halifax, which is in Daytona. So if our students are Baker Acted or any adults in the community, that is the facility that they are received in. We had 114 students that were referred for services that the parents refused to service or refused to follow up with the agencies to get them started. A little bit of a picture of our Baker Acts. I think it's a nice snapshot, I think, of kind of the big picture of things. So total of students, when you add up the Tier 1 and the Tier 2s, we were close to about almost 1,500 kids that received some kind of a referral for some type of services with us. We had, of our students, we had 209 total incidents of Baker Acts that were from June 30 from the previous year through July 12th. We tracked through the summer as well. Of those, only 62 of them were initiated from our properties. And that actually equated to 49 actual students. There were 147 of those incidents that were initiated in the community. So that was coming out of their homes or in a community setting. It was not off of our property.
But they're students.
They are student age, yes. 100, and that equated to 118 actual students there. We have a separate grant on top of the dollars we received from the state that we had partnered with a year before with Stuart Marchman in Halifax. That is an intervention grant. It's meant to be a juvenile justice diversion grant. And with that, we put in place a counselor from Halifax, or a caseworker, is actually in my office here. She is housed here. And then we have a coordinator for all of our students coming through. And that has been a godsend because it has created that communication with Halifax so that we know when a student is Baker Acted, even if it happens outside of school. We oftentimes did not know that. And then we weren't prepared when they came back to school or able to get those safety plans and supports in place. This allows that communication to occur, so it has been amazing.
Do the SROs also know about those children as well?
Oh, absolutely, yes. And we did, we try and obviously there are only certain people legally that can Baker Act, licensed mental health counselors, licensed social workers, and then of course deputies can. We have SROs on all of our campuses. They're fabulous. They work very well with our students. They serve very much in a mentoring role as well as their law enforcement duties. And we do try very hard, if we are faced with that type of a situation, to have one of our staff be the one to work with the child, assess, and work with the parent, determine if they need the Baker Act. The majority of ours were able to be Baker Acted by a licensed mental health counselor or social worker. There were only a very small handful that our deputies had to handle, and that's just if people are tied up in other locations and can't get to them, and they handle it in a very sensitive manner. But one of the things, being able to track and really see where they're coming from the community, it really was a good information for us that the supports we're able to provide on campus are deferring a lot of those. The majority of these are coming from out in the community. So that's kind of a summary of our numbers and our supports that we've put in place. I'm also a member of Flagler Cares and one of the founding members of Flagler Lifeline, which is the suicide awareness group that works with all ages here in our community. So, I think looking at what we have in the school district is a good snapshot for the overall picture, but we always like to remind all of us that mental wellness is critical from all ages. Our 2019 county health survey, health issues that the community were most concerned about, and there were about 1,000 residents that responded to that. The number one issue, with 49.1% of the respondents listing this as a concern, were mental health issues. And health services that are difficult to obtain was also number one, 42.9. Mental health counseling was listed as 42.9 of those respondents. So it's very good, I think, for us to keep in mind we're able to put a lot of those supports in place in our schools and continue to work with our providers and our partners. And we've had some very strong, good partners that have worked with us to do that. But it's a need that Flagler really needs to be sure we keep our eye on. At the end of the year, we sit down and we look and we reflect on what we've learned from that year. And so just a couple points that we really were very cognizant of when we came to the end was of how critical it was to have that Halifax coordinator housed in my office were able to be that liaison between our families that were at that most critical need with their students. We found that there's a need for mental health providers in this area who take Blue Cross Blue Shield. A lot of our families that have Blue Cross Blue Shield, we were having difficulty getting them connected with a provider. And so we're on the hunt for that. And so we can develop an MOU. We've been able to put a lot of pieces in place, and again, through partnerships like with the grant, with Stuart Marchman working with us to provide that substance abuse counselor on our campuses, working with our students, as well as all of our other agencies. One of our biggest needs we have is the need for a daytime program. There is a daytime program at Halifax that houses students that really need to be there. That's their school day. It's usually short term. It's oftentimes in order to get meds managed, kind of get the child stabilized and ready to transition back into a school. It's very difficult for our students to access that because it's not here. And so there's no transportation at this time provided. They actually become a student of Volusia County when they go down there if the parents are able to work it out, which makes it difficult for us to stay connected. We lose the state funding for them at that point. So that has been a deep conversation between ourselves and the other major players, Halifax and Stuart Marchman, on how can we work together to plug that hole for our students.
So just to clarify that, you have to unenroll them from the district, and they have to be enrolled in Volusia County so they can get the services down there.
The way it is currently set up, yes. We would, we are looking at some possible options of how we can do that a little bit differently, but that is how it's currently set up, yes. So that's the big picture. Those are our numbers. I will tell you that we are very pleased with the ability to provide these extra supports on our campus. We know that we are the closest bridge to most families that may be in need of some supports, and we are pleased that that allocation was continued to be supported by the legislature and slightly increased so that we can continue to do that, and very grateful for our partners that are a big part in this. I know Stuart Marchman is presenting after me, and they've been a very good partner to us. Any questions?
Yeah, I think we had questions. Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, Lynette, do you get any help at all from Advent Hospital or local hospital?
Not in the realm of mental health. Our partnership is through our providers at this point are through Halifax.
Have they talked to you at all about increasing their abilities in the mental health area?
One of the
They've
areas,
talked to us about it, that they want to do that.
not in a specific manner in some of these areas. I know that one of their major focuses right now with their Feel Whole initiative and their recognition of some of our statistics across our district is they're very focused on continuing to provide suicide awareness and suicide prevention, and we have had conversations with them about that and how we can partner on that.
Because they're close. You know,
They
it'd be
are very
nice-
close.
It'd be nice
Yes.
to get them more involved. The other question is, when the legislature passed the shooting legislation, it appeared to me that they fully funded mental health representatives at every school. Is that true? Are they paying for ours, the people, the 9 that you have at the schools? Is the state paying for that?
It does not cover all of our supports, no. The dollars, it supplements what we already had in place. Prior to that legislative allocation, for the psychologist alone, we were supporting 7. And so their allocation is actually supporting the 9th one. We've also picked up the 8th one ourselves. The allocation is supporting 3 of our 5 mental health counselors, and will support 2 of our 4 social workers. I'm sorry, 1 of our 4 social
Well,
workers.
Andy Dance is here. I believe that they were supposed to be fully funded. The school board was supposed to be paying for the psychologists.
Are you talking about from the legislative allocation?
Yeah. The amount of money they gave to our school board, I believe, was supposed to cover all the psychologists.
Every district received a specific allocation based on their FTE and population. They did not designate specific, they did not tell you had to put it towards your psychologist or that it needed to be put towards supports. There is no guideline as well that says you need to have a psychologist in every school. We have made the decision to do that.
And I applaud you for that. That's the right thing.
Well, applaud our board because they're the ones that have supported that.
Right thing to do. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Sullivan.
Yes, Leonard. Thanks very much. It's a lot of really good information and for what you do. I just had one thought as you were going through it, and I didn't hear you cover it. Do you have a process where if a student comes in and thinks their parents are having problems, mental problems, is there a way to follow up on that that's kind of involved? Because that might happen with the student being okay, but the parents being a little off. And so is there a way for that to work through the system?
Our social workers are a great help in that. If a student indicates that there may be some family need, we would reach out to the family and at least offer direction on where they can go for assistance and offer to help make the connection for them.
Has that happened?
There are always times when those things happen, yes, sir. And we also, we partner through like the Flagler Lifeline and Flagler Cares with that. We've had, I'm sure you've seen our Connect bus, which is sitting out here in the parking lot. That was designed as a mobile means of reaching out into the community with a variety of purposes. So one of the pieces we used it for last year was we had it at First Friday down in Flagler Beach, and we were offering mental wellness screenings. On there, we had quite a few people. We had mental health counselors there with us and information on supports. We had quite a few people stop by, several of them families, because we're Flagler schools down there with it. And we actually did end up working with Stuart Marchman that night to transport an individual adult who was one of our parents who was struggling.
Anything else, Commissioner?
Nope, that's all.
Commissioner?
Yeah, Lynette, great presentation.
Thank you.
It was a little alarming to know that we're having to unenroll and re-enroll our children. That's something new to me. On the Public Safety Council, I've heard over and over again that we don't have the proper mental health services in this community. They've been needed for many, many years. This is one of the few places that I think I've ever been in and developed or lived that I've seen the schools a little more sophisticated than our private medical services or our public medical, whatever you want to say with it. What are your feelings with the healthcare services here. Do you feel like they're behind in Flagler County as far as mental health?
I think everything we're doing is moving forward, and I think that's important. There's one of the additional services that we've been able to help provide for families with the support of Stuart Marchman was there were dollars allocated through the allegation this past year on what they call mobile response teams that are intended for the community in general, for those in crises. And so we became a partner in that grant, in that application with Stuart Marchman and Halifax. And one of the things that they agreed to do down here at the sanctuary was expand their CTTU, their crisis, I never remember what both T's are. Thank you. Treatment triage unit. It did not accept children prior to this. So they worked with us and agreed to expand that age limit now where it's 24 and under. If it's outside of school hours and they're in crises, the families now have that location that they can go to if they are in extreme crises. The hours are limited. They keep it open for they're broad, but it's not 24/7. So as we see things like that expand, it's encouraging. I do believe we need more services in our community geographically, and I think our statistics support that, both the number of students we've needed to serve in the school district itself this year, as well as our additional statistics. And of course, our suicide rate is the one that comes to mind very frequently. And I know we were number one on our cases per 100,000. We did drop down to 8 this year, but that was only a difference in two people. And the districts that are above us, several of them were ones in the path of Hurricane Michael. So, there's probably a bump in that related to that extreme situation.
Let me ask you this. The Halifax program you keep mentioning, that's in Volusia County, correct?
It is. The daytime program is in Volusia County. Now, Halifax works with us as well to have brought some people up here. Like the coordinator that's in my office is an employee of Halifax Behavioral, but they are housed in my office. So that's been beneficial. They will bring some counseling services up here. We've tapped in heavily to their grief counseling and that area. But the daytime program itself, yes, is housed in Volusia County.
Hearing all this, I think it's well known. I've been, especially with my family's medical background, I've been very proactive in saying I want to help get services, mental health services, labor and delivery, things that I think this community should have had years ago, but our community should have had years ago, but we're well on the way of really getting to where they're going to be a dire need, which I think the mental health is already there. If I can encourage and bring, and I want to say we, but I'm going to say I, because I don't want to speak for these guys. But if I could, but I know their mindsets on the same level. If we can get a very, very big organization here, and they commit to bringing mental health, would you say that the school would commit to being partnership with that and helping the kids maybe go in and training, go in and maybe some jobs with it? Just looking at the future, is there, because the areas I've seen have partnerships with the hospitals and the schools, and they work close hand in hand because those are their future employees. So how would you feel, this is your feelings, how would you feel the school would be as far as if a facility like that came in with services to that degree, a new one came into this community and offered it? Would the school be, do you think the school would be proactive in supporting that and joining them?
I think a community is strongest when there are multiple partnerships to serve the needs of their citizens. So we're always, looking for whatever. Our primary concern is the safety and well-being of our students and families. So we're always looking for that. And I think you're tapping a little bit into the other hat I wear, which is our flagship programs and Classroom to Careers. And we're very, very cognizant of forming those partnerships of big employers that we can then build our flagship career paths backwards from, where we're providing that pipeline of talent into those industries.
Lynette, I would encourage you to start lining that up then. That's all I'll say.
Thank you, Commissioner Mullins. Any other questions?
No, I think so. Thanks very much, Lynn. Sure
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay. Next up is a presentation on an overview of the services provided by SMA Healthcare, and I believe we have Mr. Ivan Kasimi here today as CEO. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. I'm Ivan Kosimi. I am the CEO of SMA Healthcare, formerly known as Stuart Marchman Act Behavioral Health. We can't seem to shake the old name, but SMA Healthcare, it's a little easier to roll off the tongue. We're a nonprofit safety net provider of behavioral health in really all the Northeast region. So tonight I wanted to either introduce or reintroduce you to SMA and what it is that we're doing for Flagler County residents. I'm hoping that this little clicker thing is going to work, and it does. Fantastic. So before I get to the specifics, I thought I'd kind of give you the big picture. You all know, or maybe you don't know, that Florida is actually ranked 49th in per capita funding for mental health services. And it's pretty stunning because when you look at how we line up state by state, Florida actually spends about $37 per capita for mental health services, and the national average is about $120. So this kind of gives you some perspective on what it's like to be a safety net provider. People dealing with people that are either uninsured or underinsured. And when you look at our funding trends over the last 20 years, I'd say, they've pretty much been flat. And as you know, the population for Florida has grown just like here in Flagler County. What that means is that really, in effect, the curve is actually going down. You adjust it for inflation, you adjust it for population, and our funding levels are going down. And this is a little bit dated. This material here it's into 2013, but I can tell you that the rest of the trend continues the same, with the exception of the big input of mental health dollars they did last year for the school system. But for the overall community, that funding has been relatively flat. So what it's led us providers to do is to actually go out and try to find special projects from our legislature, because they're not going to fund the base. And so you'll see me every year coming to ask for a particular project, and I'll come back next year and ask for that to be recurring. And again, they'll say, well, here's that project, but we'll make it non-recurring, so I'll come back the next year. And it's kind of been the trend over the many years that I've been doing this. In addition, what we have to do to provide these services is go after grants. And so you heard Lynette talk a little bit about some of the grants that we received. And when you look at SMA, I think last year we received 11 different grants for services. All of them have timelines to them. They're year money or 3-year money. All of them have certain criteria for the services that you're going to provide. You're going to provide for this population or that population, this age group, or what have you. And what it does is it leads to a very complicated public message, and it leads to confusion from the public. So when they come to get services, it's this really tangled web of services where we have to figure out where we can plug them in to get the services paid for. So it's a complicated system. But that's my problem. I have to deal with that, and that's kind of life in the behavioral health field as a safety net provider. But I do want to tell you a little bit about Flagler, and Lynette, again, mentioned the suicide rate significantly over the Florida rate. And this year, yes, it did come down to 29, but again, it's an issue, here in Flagler County. And the overdose trend for Flagler County is also, while it's slightly under the Florida rate, it follows the same trend for Florida and for the nation. This is what's getting all the attention. Yes, we have a mental health crisis. We have an opioid crisis. And behind opioids, I hate to say it, but methamphetamine is another issue that we're going to be dealing with here very shortly, because I'm seeing those numbers kind of spike right now. And at our June 21st meeting, the Flagler County Community Health Needs Assessment, which Lynette mentioned, it found that adult behavioral health and youth mental health are the two priorities for the community in terms of health needs. So that kind of gives you the big picture, the picture of Flagler County in a snapshot. And I want to tell you a little bit about SMA. And just, and I'll tell you the backdrop of the funding has really led to a lot of providers either going out of business, failing, business failures, or people, providers not wanting to get into this space at all. So as we've sat there with the flat trends of revenue and obviously increasing costs, so we've had to do is really provide a regional approach to things. So things like crisis services, so our detox, our crisis stabilization unit, our residential services, so for women's residential here in Bunnell or for men's residential in DeLand, those are regional sites that we're linking folks to, and Flagler County residents are no exception to that. We do have a site here in Flagler County, and I thank the county actually donated us land a while ago, before my time, and we started actually outpatient services in 1985. We opened our Flagler Detox and residential services in 2002, and in 2005 we actually had to cut those services due to funding. In 2009, Vince Carter and his foundation actually gave us a lead donation to build something we thought was going to be very innovative. We were going to have 100 beds of residential. 50 we would bill for private pay. In other words, folks would come to us with dollars to pay for treatment. And with those dollars, those profits, if you will, we would fund 50 indigent clients. And we had never been in this business before, and as you can imagine, we learned a lot. We learned that it's hard to fill 50 beds of private pay with the space that we have over there at Vince Carter. Beautiful building, but just couldn't make it work. So we actually had to close the doors of the Vince Carter Sanctuary for private pay residential in 2012. Thankfully, right behind that, the state actually gave us an appropriation, a recurring appropriation, for substance abuse residential treatment for women and their babies. And so we've got that going on right now. About 70 ladies live with us at any given point in time, along with around 26 or so babies. So that's sort of what's going on there now. And then in 2014, you heard Lynette talk a little bit about the CTTU, the Crisis Treatment and Triage Unit. And that's really our way of connecting folks back to these regional sites, regional services. And it doesn't necessarily need to be an SMA service either, if it's more appropriate for Halifax or more appropriate even to Jacksonville. These are the services that we offer on our Flagler campus. You can see, you get an idea of all the different varying services. So when I hear that, I've heard it kind of reiterated a few times that there's no services. There is a pretty good amount of services going on in Flagler County. Now, I'll mention that, with the kind of the same funding perspective that I gave you earlier, maintaining staff and trying to keep a good, healthy workforce has been a challenge. So we do have vacancies from time to time that end up impacting these services a little bit. These are the regional services that we offer. I'm not going to go into all these, obviously. These are just various services that we provide to any resident regardless of zip code, okay? So when you look at what did we do last year, fiscal year 18-19 for residents of Flagler County, I just want to give you kind of an idea of the diagnosis and the primary drug of choice so you get an idea. Just with diagnosis, bipolar, depression, schizophrenia, 50% of our caseload is right there. Other mental health, and then obviously substance use disorders. It's hard to have that conversation because a lot of these things overlap. You're not necessarily a substance user or a mental health issue. You've got a little bit of both, most likely. But in terms of our primary substance use, this one's startling for us just because of the large opiate issue that you see there. More better than 30%, and then the meth and stimulants again. Alcohol used to be one of our biggest drivers, but that's changing here recently. When you look at our residents and how many we served by service, you can see that we served 1,600 in outpatient and case management. We did screenings and assessment on 1,578 folks, and we provided residential CSU or detox to about 331 folks last year. And the value of that and who pays for it is here on these little slides here. About $2 million roughly in residential CSU and detox and outpatient, and about almost $900,000 in screening and assessment. And you can see who actually pays for that, which is DCF dollars, okay? And when you break down all of those numbers, you can see we served about 2,584 Flagler County residents. And I'll say, when you look at that, that's an unduplicated count. I think what always is impactful is the folks around those 2,500 folks, right? It's their coworkers, it's their family members, it's their all the folks that they live with in the community. Delivered about 19,000 services and about $5 million worth of value in those services. What's next for SMA? Right now, the funding is in what's called medication-assisted treatment, and it's for that opioid issue. And specifically in the hospital, a hospital bridge program specifically relates to somebody who has hit the emergency room with an overdose or close to an overdose, and getting that bridge from the emergency room into treatment. So that's something new that we're going to be working with Advent Health here in town to get that program up and running. And we're also going to be creating a MAT outpatient clinic right here on the campus. So those are two things that are pretty solid that are going to be happening this year. Lynette mentioned a little bit about the partnerships. To survive in this region, in this area of behavioral health, you have to have collaborative partnerships. They just have to be. So we're working with Flagler Health Plus on some things, working with Halifax, working with the school board, and also Advent Health, just as some ideas of what we're doing there. And then obviously anything that's mission focused and has a grant opportunity for this county, we're going to be doing that as well. So that concludes my presentation. I want to thank you all. You guys are a partner with us. As you know, you fund some of our services here, and I want to thank you for that, and that's all I have.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sullivan, I think you're on there.
Thank you. Just one quick question, and I don't even know if it's significant. Population. Are we seeing a percentage?
But I think your mic is muted.
I'm sorry. Did you hear it?
Yeah, I did. I heard you.
Okay.
Yeah, the incidence of mental health is been about 20% of the population, and that's been a pretty good standard.
That's
one in every 5. And so, yeah, as the population increases, the
It just-
issue gets bigger.
Right. Okay.
That's
But
what
the
we've seen.
percentage is staying about the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's correct.
Ivan, I want to thank y'all. I'm sorry, can I? Yeah, I want to thank y'all for the hard work y'all do. I know as being involved with the opioid task force in different states and then starting the one here and living in recovery, it's not an easy thing to deal with. We're a little crazy on that end, and we need those services. I say we because of my participation in recovery. Your professional opinion of looking at Flagler, do you think we could use more services in this?
Oh,
community?
definitely, yes.
Would your guys and you guys be open to partnership with other services, other medical providers that come in and bring mental health?
Yes, sir, definitely.
So I think the fact that we're addressing it and we're looking at it and we're speaking about it is the first start. And I think the action that we're about to take, that we'd like to see is taken in the community is going to be good. So again, I'll say the same thing I said to Lynette, get ready.
Okay.
We need you. We need your help.
I love the optimism, and we're here to serve. So however we can fit into all of that, we're definitely willing and able.
Thank you.
In terms of, with our partnership, are there glaring holes or things that we should be thinking about from a strategic planning standpoint as a commission, going forward?
Well, I do think that the county just needs to keep their eye focused on the issue. And and ask the questions on, I'm not familiar with all of the things that are funded by the county, but just ask the question, do we feel like that's adequate enough? I know for SMA, the funding has been flat. I've never actually come to the board and asked for an
You have
increase
not.
in all those years, yeah. And so, that's something that, who knows, if there's opportunities out there to increase funding, that would be fantastic.
I would like to have a little bit more knowledge about the whole funding side of it from our standpoint, and also some of your sources with respect to Lutheran services and whatnot, and DCF. Maybe we can do that offline. If I could contact you, that would be helpful to me.
I would love that. I left you guys a packet that has my card on the inside sleeve there. My cell phone number's on there. Feel free to call me.
Okay.
Chairman, if you do that, I would love to, because I don't understand it much, if you could give an update and come back and let us know. I would love to know a little more about how we help them and the partnership
Okay.
process.
Yep. Any other questions, commissioners? Okay.
Thank you for your
sir.
time.
Appreciate it.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Mr. Chairman,
Sir.
if I may, I just would like to share with you my experience with SMA for about 10 years in St. Johns County, working specifically with Mr. Cosimi and his predecessor, Chet Bell. We developed some tremendous partnerships due to the participation of SMA with St. Johns County and other providers. We were able to get a Florida assertive care team to serve our worst cases that needed to be managed. We were able to get a drop-in center, which was done through the SMA folks and Ivan specifically. We were able to get a detoxification center for another provider, largely due to the support and lobbying efforts of SMA. We were able to get additional services through the local hospital, through the efforts of SMA. In short, over that 10-year period, the really robust partnership with SMA created greatly enhanced services and millions of dollars in tax savings to the county. I've had some preliminary discussions with Mr. Cosimi. He's got some great ideas about how partnerships can happen to increase services here in Flagler County, and I'm excited about the prospects of working with him very closely in the coming year.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Cameron. And I think all of us on the commission here are very interested in hearing that and participating in that, because I think time has come. So thank you. Okay. Next up, we have a presentation on Nextdoor by Julie.
Yes, hi. And I'm going to sit over here so that I can run the computer a little bit. I'm Julie Murphy. I'm Flagler County Public Information Officer. And Nextdoor is a social media platform that people they create by a geographic location. So we cannot go into their neighborhoods and see what they're posting. However, we can post onto their pages when we have a message that is pertinent for us to get across. And so with that, there are 90 neighborhoods in Flagler County that have been set up, which is about 23% of all of the households. And when I go to post a message, you'll see that when I go here, it gives you several options. The first thing is choose your type of message, which for ours it's typically general. And then you choose your audience. So you can either go to the entire area or you can go to specific neighborhoods. And you'll see when you click on neighborhoods, it shows you how many residents have signed up. Like Beach Haven's got 197 residents. Belterre has 464 residents. And so when you have a message that's specific, like we sent out our most recent news release about the Plantation Bay water, just to the Plantation Bay community, which is about 1,200, I think, as I scroll down here. 1,200 residents. So we can send it just to them because they're the ones who are going to be most interested in what our update is. And moving forward, I'll be able to do things like work with GIS. So we've got evacuation zones when we have a storm, so we can let those neighborhoods know if they are in an evacuation zone and what zone they're in. We also, because they make allowances for governments, we shared with Flagler Schools. They had a survey. So for Jason Wheeler, I posted their survey out there. 4,800 people looked at that. When Congressman Waltz toured our dunes, we were able to post a picture and just a little bit of text. 4,600 people were interested in that. 7 people commented. Others liked and gave us little smiley faces and hearts, which is always good. We reached 5,200 people with our budget presentation award. And then you'll notice here is the Plantation Bay. It shows only 339 people looked at that, but we only sent it to the 1,200 people who would be interested in that topic. So that still is a really great way for us to reach out to our residents, to get the word out another way, and to be specific when it's important just for certain neighborhoods to get that information out. Do you have any questions about the platform?
The purpose is to let us know that you're putting out public information using this platform, I guess?
Yes, and to let you know that it's available. So if you have something in your district that becomes an issue that you want to make sure that a certain area, say Grand Haven maybe, or a certain neighborhood, that they really get the information, that we have ways to contact those residents specifically.
So,
Hold on.
oh, sorry.
You're not number one,
Oh,
Commissioner.
I mean,
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yeah, I just noticed when you quickly went through that list, is Grand Haven one of the neighborhoods you're in?
Yes, Grand Haven is one of the neighborhoods, and it's actually one of the largest ones. I think there are 2,200 people who
Okay.
live in Grand
Okay.
Haven who
When
have
you flipped through
subscribed.
the list, I just didn't notice it. Okay.
Yeah, so we've got 90 neighborhoods, so it's a great tool to be able to get information out to our residents without, and we love that the media picks up a lot of our stuff, but this way we can get the message out without waiting for the radio to pick something up or for the News Journal or the Observer to pick something up. We can get our message directly to our residents.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Commissioner Mullins?
yeah. I don't know if I'd use social media to speak to the public. No, I'm joking.
Can we block people?
Yeah. Julie, so I know how these work because a lot of the town halls, the people come in and that's how they start communicating, and they ask me if I've gotten on Nextdoor. I'm not familiar with Nextdoor. I don't use it as much, but what I've noticed is there's a bunch of Nextdoors, like you said. Is this a method to communicate? Do you have to go to every Nextdoor and post stuff on there, or is there a way to do this?
No,
and it goes
so I'll
to all
scroll
of them?
back up to the top. If we choose, like when I'm posting a message, and I choose the audience, I can choose our entire service area, which would be all 90 neighborhoods.
Oh, wow.
You're playing with fire learning about this, Commissioner. This is not good for you.
I think I may try this.
Well,
like
I have
this.
to say, we can do this because we're a government, so I'm signed up as our government agent to handle that, but he would sign up for his own neighborhood where he lives, which is in a small geographic area. And when you apply to it, they check your address and they make sure that you actually live in the neighborhood so you don't have, I don't know, somebody from Miami is not joining our neighborhoods up here.
So how many do we have?
We've got 23,000 people have signed up, and we've got 90 neighborhoods. So
I'd
it
need
reaches
to buy
about
90
23% of our households.
Does it have push notifications, or is it you have to sign on to the page to get the information, correct?
Yeah, so it's a little bit like Facebook. So not everybody goes on Facebook every day. So I think most of our views are about in the 5,000 neighborhood, and I'd say those are probably our 5,000 most active. But I would say during times of storm, people know that we're out here. You know, things when we have really critical messaging going out, they'll know to check it as one of our channels that we use to deliver messages.
Commissioner?
Yeah, just so, because I'm not as computer literate as many people, but in my neighborhood in Grand Haven, I'm on that neighborhood, but there's a code word you have to, in other words, I pull up my neighborhood, and then I have a code word if I haven't been on for a while that I have to put in, so I have access to my Grand Haven neighborhood. Is that what you're talking about here?
Well, I do not have to do that because we're government, but I can't go into any individual neighborhood and see what they're posting. I can see if somebody replies to something that I've posted or asks a question
But that's
about
where I'll see
something.
your postings.
Yes, that's where
Okay.
you'll see
There's no-
them,
no
but we
separate
can't go,
thing,
like,
right.
I can't go into the Grand Haven neighborhood and see
Good.
you and your neighbors having a conversation about your barbecue that you're going to have. I can't do that. We're not watching other people, we're just giving them an opportunity to
Yeah,
watch
I was just
us.
saying that's just the typical way that it works. Everybody has their own access into their own neighborhood
Correct.
system. Okay.
We
You
good?
know, Julie, I think that's great. I think it's a great method. As you know, I've used social media a little bit, and the public really reaches out and enjoys the communication. And I think this is something that would be great to turn over and see us do.
Well, and we're able to
good
turn
job.
off comments and not have people comment, but I've left those open, I've left them on, and people have, largely been respectful, and it's been really nice dialogue, and it's great to be able to ask or answer questions directly.
Thank you for the information, Julie. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Okay. All right. Next up is our community outreach portion on the agenda. And again, a reminder, this is a 30-minute time period allocated for public comment on any consent agenda items or topics not on our agenda. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes to address the commission. Speakers should approach the podium, identify themselves, and direct comments to the chair. And our community outreach portion is open.
Jack Carroll, I'm a resident of Palm Coast.
Yes, sir.
Now that all your blaming and everything, and all your lawsuits are all settled, and you're sitting back, now comes the question. What do we do with those two buildings? What do we do with that building that's been standing there now almost a year, and nobody's done a thing about it? It just sits there and sits there and sits there. And you talk about it, you talk about it, and you talk about it. Nobody does anything. And now you got another building that you got to concern yourself with. Now that's going to stand. And then every time you pass it, you can say to yourself, Jesus Christ, look at the bad decisions we made. First sheriff made a decision, and he bought that stupid building. You made a decision with the sheriff, and you bought the Sears building. Dilapidated, leaky, moldy. And I don't understand how, in God's name, you didn't see all this before you bought the building. I mean, you're five educated, well-positioned people. How could you do that? And then on top of that, you put the blame on a court clerk because he didn't want to give up any property. None of his offices. But you own the building, so you can say what you want. You can do what you want. But in the meantime, you're cramping his style. So, you got two buildings that are doing nothing, wasting our money. You got an office space that's now congested with extra people. And the question is, before the sheriff moved in, he had his offices over by the jail. Can I ask what happened to those offices? Why he can't move back into that while we're getting a new building for him? Why don't we just tear down the old buildings, right? And use that area where it should be to have.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll address those here in a minute. Anyone else wish to comment? I was seeing if anyone else wanted to speak, and then we'll talk about those things. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, George Mayo, Palm Coast. First of all, yeah, what he said. Second of all, I was coming home the other day with my wife coming north on Route 1, coming up to our new roundabout. There was a 18-wheeler tractor trailer directly in front of me. And he was in the left lane, the pass-through go north lane. There was a car right in the middle of his trailer, and I know, having been a tractor-trailer driver for a number of years, you hate when cars just sit directly on the side of you in the middle. Luckily, that car was turning out to the right onto the road there. This tractor-trailer, in order to negotiate it, had a swing from the left lane, completely took up the right lane. So if that car had not turned, there could have been an accident. And both rear axles, left rear axles, went a third of the way completely over top of the roundabout. We had to come to a stop in order for him to go slow enough to negotiate that. He was doing as best as he could as a tractor-trailer driver. There was also a car pulling out of the road by White Eagle going north. Had they started pulling out, that could have been a tentative situation also. As I went through, I looked, because what happens is the trailer wheels are now dragging at that kind of angle. And I looked at the roundabout, and there's all kinds of tire marks from tractor trailers. There's some almost have gone right through the center of it. All you have to do is take a ride and go and look at it yourself. I know there is nothing we can do about it. This is a state DOT decision. But I implore you, have somebody on the commission next time there is a meeting with DOT, somebody from the administration. Take somebody from DOT and just drive there and say, look at these tire marks. What kind of engineer? Obviously, the engineer who designed that never drove an 18-wheeler, because there's no way the radius of that traffic circle, roundabout, can suffice a tractor trailer. So you probably won't have high-speed accidents like there were at that intersection before, but I implore you to make sure, with less room available over at Cody's Corner, if they put a roundabout there, it's going to not be a pretty situation. And ask them when they put one up in Matanzas on Route 1, if they could re-look at this, what they designed here. And it's there to see. Just go look at the tire marks. That is not a big of a radius curve in order to substantiate tractor trailers going through there, and they go through there all the time. So I know it's not your decision, but please have as loud a voice as we can, whether it's the administration or the commission, talk to DOT and say, look at what you've done, and it's really maybe working in their estimation, but I don't see it happening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayo. Anyone else for community outreach? All right, seeing no one approach the podium, I'll close that portion of our agenda. A couple things with respect to your comments, Mr. Carroll. I think I want to defer to you, Mr. Cameron, on that. I will say on the Sears building, when you make a purchase, if you're not a real estate expert, you rely on the warranties of the seller, and you rely on an inspection report from a professional that you hire. And in both cases, we have issues with those folks, which has resulted in a lawsuit. And I don't think it's right for us to comment on that because we're in the middle of that right now. But I can assure you this commission is very much committed to making sure that we do everything possible to make the taxpayers whole in this transaction one way or the other. So we'll just have to leave that as it. I think the attorney would probably agree that I shouldn't say any more about that than I already have, and we'll just leave it at that on that transaction. Mr. Adid.
Hello? Okay, there it is. claims have been filed against the insurance carriers of the parties that were involved in the transaction. So we're still awaiting the outcome of those. The lawsuit hasn't been filed. We're attempting to resolve it by claims with the
Okay.
insurance companies
Okay, thank you.
of the individuals involved.
Yep.
Companies and individuals involved.
Okay. And as far as the existing operations building, we're still awaiting inspection results and information from the CDC. It's my understanding, correct?
Yes, sir. We've been back and forth with testing agencies. The CDC has not weighed in. We're expecting that fairly shortly, and there has been constant activity because if there's a way possible, and I believe that there will very well may be a way possible to salvage a $6 million investment, that we're not going to walk away from it. So we are anticipating some reports back from testing agencies. We've gotten those reports periodically, and the result of every report has been to narrow the focus on where the problem may be. I think we're getting to that point, and it is the building has been kept in a environmentally controlled situation so that the deterioration doesn't get any worse. But I would think that within the next few months we would have some sort of an answer, and then the remediation process, we will have to determine how that would be handled with regard to the budget to bring the building back to a serviceable condition. And just to tell you, on the Sears building, that occurred right before I got here. I don't believe the county could have done any more due diligence than it did. They hired first-class engineering consultants to look at the building, evaluate it, and they did everything that you should have done in a pre-purchase due diligence period. So the fact that the building turned out to be what it is was completely unforeseen, because the information in front of the Board of County Commissioners I have reviewed, and that information would have led a reasonable person to believe that there was not a serious problem with the building. I have since found out that maybe the people that were doing that worked for us, let the county commission down, but we are addressing that through the legal process.
Thank you. And with respect to roundabouts, Mr. Mayo, I am our county's representative on the River to Sea Transportation Planning Organization, attend their monthly meetings. FDOT representatives are always at those meetings. So, I mean, I'll pass on your comments. But, you know, the determination, as you said, is foregone. So,
Can I add something to because of this commission and us working real hard, an update on the Cody's Corner roundabout? It's not happening. They are going to look at other methods right now. They're going to evaluate it longer and see. So we are working on those. We may have got a little behind the 8 ball on the one on US 1 or the 2, but the Hall Creek, it was a combined effort. And there was a letter that was sent out last year. There was a lot of speculation. Did a letter get sent out by the commission in opposition? There was one that was sent out. We found it, and Commissioner Hanson had sent that out. So they are working on those.
okay. I want to go, I apologize, Commissioners. I needed to go back on something. Mr. Cameron had an introduction for us on our new finance director, and I was supposed to do that before we got to community outreach, so apologize about that.
Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chair. Our HR department, Ms. Wu, has done an excellent job of going out, looking for qualified applicants to fill the position of finance director. We have gone through the selection process. It was a little unusual this time in that we had the entire finance team to do the interviews. Was very interesting. We had one candidate that we felt that really stood out, was heartily endorsed with excitement, I might say, by every member of the finance team, and I am very enthusiastic also. And it's my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. John Brower as our selection for a new finance director to take us forward. He has over 12 years of experience in progressive advancement of responsibility in Alachua County and their finance department. He brings credentials in addition to being a financial analyst to being a management analyst, which will be a big help to us as the county grows, and we have to change our organization to accommodate that. He has property here in Flagler, was planning to move to Flagler County at some point in the future. He is able to accelerate that. He and his wife, who is also here, are excited about moving almost immediately to Flagler County. I've had some great conversations with him as late as this afternoon. I think he is aligned with the vision of government that y'all want to have going forward. It's an important decision. The budget department is the heart of our organization. It pumps resources to our service delivery points. And I would request that you approve, subject to his background investigation coming in, my appointing him as our new finance director at a salary that was roughly equivalent to the finance director that left for the coming budget year of $104,135. And with that, I'd be happy to have you ask me, the HR director, or our candidate, any questions the board may have.
No one pushed their button, so Commissioner Sullivan, I'm going to go to you first.
Just welcome aboard and good luck. And it is an important job here in the county.
You unmute your button, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to reiterate what Dave said, and Pam, you've done a phenomenal job in human resources. I could use someone like you in my company. I know it's not an easy, I know it's not an easy task. I get messages and reports from different areas where we're located about the personnel and the challenges, and you've done a great job. One thing I will say, and I know it's coming up, and we got to be aware of it, is we've got to get competitive with our wages, because we're going to be seeing that challenge. We're going to be losing a lot more people if we don't, and I think it's something we've got to address, and hopefully as the economy picks up in the industry in Flagler County, it'll give you the tools to be able to pay these competitive salaries. And Mr. Cameron, great job on what you're doing there and building a good bench. And I look forward to seeing you on here. It's a fun group in great county and best place in the country to live in. So welcome.
Commissioner Hanson.
Just welcome aboard, Mr. Brower. Pleasure to have you.
All right. Do we want to make a motion here?
Mr. Chairman, I move that, subject to a background investigation, we approve the appointment of Mr. Brower as our finance director.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. That carries. That do it for you, sir?
In light of your decision, he will turn in his letter of resignation tomorrow, and he'll be on board with us September the 3rd. Thank you very much.
Welcome, sir. Okay, next up is our consent agenda. So we'll start with you, Commissioner Hanson. Any items to pull from the agenda?
7I, please.
7I, Commissioner Sullivan.
7K, 7J.
Commissioner Mullins.
I've got nothing.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda with the exception of 7I, 7J, and 7K.
we have a motion. We have a second to that.
Second?
Okay, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda with the removed items 7I, J, and K, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unopposed, that motion carries unanimously. 7I, go ahead, Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, I had a couple questions on 7I. I didn't understand from the write-up, excuse me, does this cover the entire county, or does it just cover the unincorporated area of Flagler County? You don't have anybody to answer that? Okay.
It's my understanding that this is a committee that covers the entire county. It would involve participation of all the municipalities and lots of other partners around the county to be involved in this process, which is mostly to get our numbers, to get the count as accurate as possible and to involve as many partners as possible during the process and the communication of it.
Right. I gather that we don't know how much this is going to cost or how much the cities will contribute to this. It just says the budget numbers will be given to us in the future. That always scares me a little bit. But do we know? If we know, anybody can answer that. So
we should be able to also see what we spent because we have the same organization, same committee in 2010. It was it was chaired by Commissioner by Melissa Holland at the time. So
just for information, I've already had a Census Bureau guy knock on my door yesterday.
I'll say this too, the census is so important we had a meeting with the USDA today, and it is so important that we focus and participate in this census as strong as we can because that helps us with a lot of funding. It's nothing to play around with.
Ma'am, please come forward.
The answer coming forward.
Wait, hold on. You got to come to the mic and
Introduce yourself.
Introduce yourself.
I'm Nadine Meinhardt. I'm a partnership specialist in Florida, serving Flagler County with my colleague Victor Cora. He is not able to be here today, but we have thus far met with Rose and a great team to get a jump start on establishing this important committee. We thank them for their enthusiasm and dedication to partner with us to ensure that everyone gets counted. In 2010, Flagler was at 79%, so we got some work to do for all the right reasons. And we are able to, with our web application tools, target the hard-to-count areas, as well as everybody. It's a growing county. We don't want to miss anyone or assume everybody hasn't been covered. So it's an interesting project. We have a lot of energy and enthusiasm to work together with the team and bring the right trusted voices to the committee to cover everything: education, faith-based, renters, all the hard-to-count populations, demographics that research has told us are the trends ongoing, and we're already underway. And together with Rose and the team, we're going to develop a workshop to get a jump start on this and continue with an action plan to stay on course and to get 2020 success and bring those numbers up.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
So do you work with the feds on this? I mean, do you work with the Census Bureau, if you will?
Yes, we work with the Census Bureau, and we're employees of the Census Bureau.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Cameron, there was a question from Commissioner Hanson, and I had the same question about, have we budgeted anything for this committee at this point?
Yes, we have finance here to address that.
Okay. We can't ask Mr. Brower that question?
I told him he could leave, that the only way he could go from this point was down.
Hi, Commissioners. Lauren Shank, Budget Analyst. I see we're on 7I. I actually don't have the backup for that, so.
Okay. It wasn't part of our backup, but maybe if you can provide that to us,
We
sir.
can.
We'd like to know what's budgeted, if anything, yet for this.
I'll put that out on a yellow header. I'm not sure at this point exactly how we're doing it, but I know we are doing it.
Okay.
The write-up says it's not budgeted.
Okay. All right. Okay. Any other comments, questions, Commissioners?
In addition to your dedication of funds, we have tools and resources to help market this,
Right.
to get the good results that you need and stick with you through the end till, the invitation comes out in March, and we got to stay with it through next summer to make sure everybody gets counted.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve 7I.
I think I need to open it up for public comment first. Sorry. Anyone from the public wish to comment on item 7I? Okay, seeing no one approach the podium, I'll close public comment and ask for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve item 7I.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 None opposed? Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, 7J and K, I guess, Commissioner Sullivan, you asked?
Yeah, item 7J, I see our librarian is here. This is an important issue, the grant we're putting forward again. As you know, this became embroiled in the whole issue of the Sheriff's Operations Center, Sheriff's Operations Space, and the solution for that. So we delayed getting the grant last year when we were number one to get it, and probably was after 3 years, this was probably the year we were going to actually get it. But anyway, when I read through the backup, I read the recommendation and so on and so forth. I just want to make sure that when this came up before, I had said that let's not do away with the fact that we might want to, if we do build the South Library, let's have it designed so that we could add a couple of things. One would be if we ever lose the Wickline Center, as it gets older and older, and the city of Flagler Beach may have some designs on that for the future for their needs, that we at least be able to accommodate something like that at the South Library in the future when we design the building. And then second, we already have a sign out there saying that that'll also be the location for the new Bunnell Sheriff's District office. Now, when I read through the backup for this item, it says the money can only be used exclusively for a library. And I have discussed this, but I'd be interesting to know, does that apply in this case? Can there be additions to such a building if we get this grant? So I was wondering about the answer to that question.
Do you want me to take that, Holly, or you want it? The funding that would be for the library that would come from the grant would be exclusively for the library, which would meet the requirements of the grant. There is nothing that would prohibit future construction, additions, or other uses on that site.
Even if they were attached to the building?
Even if they were attached to the building, if they were not part of the library itself.
Well, the sheriff's is going to be a completely different building, the sheriff's office.
It could be attached depending on the staging. We've got to look at the financial considerations. If the library is built first, it could well be standalone. If the proper financial instruments are available and we can service it immediately, you could save cost in your mobilization cost and some of the economies of scale by an attachment, but that would not interfere with the functions of the library in any way whatsoever. And we are, Commissioner Sullivan, considering what we may be doing with social services, possibly to defragment our services, which are pretty fragmented at the moment.
Right, and I would just say that in St. Johns County, where we have regular meetings at the Southeast Library Branch, you do have the police station attached to that library on Route 1.
That's correct. And you have, in addition to that, you're going to have a sheriff's department at the main library now in Palm Coast. So they are actually pretty compatible uses. There is some savings. We're also looking at putting the tax collector in that location to save money from the rent that she's paying in an expensive shopping center. Plus, that would eliminate 2 security guards, one for the library and one for the tax collector, which would come up to be approximately $100,000 a year.
Well, that was my question.
Other questions or comments on this item, Commissioners? All right, seeing none, I'll open this one up to the public. Anyone wish to comment on item 7J? All right, seeing no one come forward, I'll close public comment, ask for a motion on the item.
Motion to approve item 7J, Public Library Construction Grant Application and Resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed, that motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, 7K, Commissioner Sullivan, I think you asked for that too.
Well, anytime I see anything to do with sponsorship packages and so forth on the tourism side, I read through the information. I'm a little information on where the money's coming from. This is already in the budget. It's this year's money, next year's money. I probably could figure that out by reading the stuff again, but I just kind of be interested in a little background and overview of what this is and why we're doing it.
Sure. Amy Lukasik, Interim Tourism Director. And really the vendor's the one using the word sponsorship. It's a TV show, How to Do Florida with Chad Crawford, and there's only so many episodes in the season that can be purchased. So we look at it as an advertising media buy, just like if we would buy television spots, we're buying an actual episode. But he promotes, probably where he gets the word sponsorship, he promotes all the communities that he highlights all season. So just like an event has sponsors, the TV show for that season has sponsors, which are the destinations.
Right. Is that the standard price for an episode?
Yes, and because we are a Visit Florida partner, there was a little bit of a discount, 10%. And it basically covers the whole state of Florida and one location, Mobile, Alabama area outside of Florida. And what really sparked my interest is that I talked to a lot of colleagues that have worked with him, and they were very pleased. And the initial mindset for this TV episode was to highlight Flagler Beach after post-construction, to bring him in once the colder weather has passed, and we can visually on TV highlight. And he has a big following, so.
Do we get the whole show?
We get the whole 30 minutes, yeah, minus commercials.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Commissioners? No? I'll open this item up for public comment. Anyone from the public wish to comment on item 7K? Seeing no one approach the podium, I'll close public comment, bring it back for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve 7K.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
None opposed. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Commissioners. Okay, moving on to general business. We have an appointment for the Contractor Review Board. And Ms. Davis, 1 second. We have these sheets mixed up. We need to get them to the right person.
I've got mine.
Well, okay.
Take a look.
We got it now. We're on the wrong place. Sorry, we got them now. All right, go ahead. Sorry, Mari.
Okay. Good evening, Chairman O'Brien and Commissioners. Before you is a request for board approval for the Contractor Review Board appointments. First, we have the appointment of Mr. William Dudley Jr. in the category of licensed electrical contractor. And on your ballots, you'll find for Contractor Review Board in the category of licensed general building or residential contractor, please choose one. Mr. Luis Medeiros in consideration for reappointment, or Mr. Daniel Parati for appointment. Please choose one.
Okay.
I was just wondering if either of the gentlemen are here.
Would you gentlemen like to introduce yourselves? Or?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Luis Medeiros. I've been the chairman of the Contractors Review Board for the last 12 years. I'm also been on the Home Builders as president 3 times. I currently still also sit on the board. And I've been president of the Portuguese American Cultural Center twice. And I've been in this community for over 20 years. And I thank you for your service.
In your spare time, you build homes, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you for your service, Louis.
Thank you for your service.
I'm actually Frank Dudley, William Franklin Dudley for Palmetto Electric on the electrical side. Just here to say hi, and I've been, serving the board since 2007, and I enjoy doing it. Trying to protect the community and educate the community with what we do. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think Mr. Priati's here as well. So. Can we bend that down for him, or do we need to get a? Thank you.
Well, gentlemen, thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Owens, commissioners. Thank you. I'm a licensed contractor here, general contractor. I hold 3 state contractors' license. I'm involved in the community. I've been here 25 plus years, and I just feel it's time for new blood to be put in with a different perspective of what's been going on. With the great things you guys have been doing as the county, bringing it forward, I feel it's time to change some things up and get some fresh blood on the board with a different view and different perspective on what's been taking place. If I can't get on this seat, I believe there's 10 seats open and there's only 7 board members on there, that maybe we could look at different rules and allow me to come on as a resident, to have a different view to look at what's been going on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Priati. Okay.
We have board approval 3-1, Mr. Luis Medeiros for reappointment.
Okay. All right. Do we have a motion to?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve Mr. William Dudley in the category licensed electrical contractor, and the appointment of continued appointment, Mr. Luis Medeiros, in the category of licensed general building or residential contractor.
We have a motion. We have a second on that.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. That motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Davis. And thank you, gentlemen, for coming in and talking with us. Appreciate it. Okay. Item 8B is a quasi-judicial matter. This is a request for final plat approval on and acceptance of a performance bond and maintenance bond for the Surfview at Matanzas Shores subdivision, owner at Surfview LLC. And Mr. Mengel.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Adam Mengel, Planning Director. This is the final step in the Surfview plat. It's a 5-lot subdivision. It's gone through several stages with us, beginning with its future land use and rezoning some time ago, preliminary plat. Those improvements are now in place. We have a performance bond for the last remaining work, setting of the lot corners and similar improvements. Maintenance bond then also going along with that. Staff's recommendation is for approval of the final plat, and with your action tonight, then we'll move forward with getting signatures and getting this recorded into public records. I'm available for any questions you have.
Before we do that, I apologize. This is a quasi-judicial matter, so we just need disclosure on any ex parte communications. Commissioner Hanson?
I have none to report.
Commissioner Sullivan?
None to report.
None.
Commissioner?
None.
Okay,
None.
sorry, and I do not have any either as well. So any questions for Mr. Mengel on this item? Commissioner Sullivan?
Just one, I just want to make sure I remember this correctly. This is one of the first items that came before when I was on the board back in, I think, December of 2016.
That's correct, yes, sir.
And I thought these were going to be townhouses, not single-family houses, but that could have changed over time. But I almost seem to remember they were going to be townhouses and maybe more than this number. Is that correct? I just want to make sure I've got the same place.
Yes, sir. I think you're remembering correctly. I think we had started out at maybe a number closer to 7, and then now we're down to 5. They are single-family lots. They do have side setbacks, so no attached party walls on these.
Right. Okay.
Any other questions, commissioners?
Yeah, the size of the lot, each one varies.
They do.
They get bigger and bigger and bigger as they get.
Yes, sir.
But they're all except one are 50 feet wide.
As I recall, yes, sir. Yes, and they meet our minimum requirements for the zoning. Yes, sir.
And they'll all be on septic, or are they going to plug into the system up there?
They're going to be on the Matanzas Shores system. They'll be providing, Matanzas Shores Owners Association will provide the sewer treatment, and then City of Palm Coast will have the water connection for that. There will be no obligations on the part of the county for any maintenance or assumption of any maintenance by the county.
Do they go under A1A?
They will, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no more questions, I'll open this item up to the public. Anyone from the public wish to comment on item 8B? Seeing no one approach the podium, I'll close public comment, bring it back for a motion on this item.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve item 8B, application 3178.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
None opposed. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Mangle. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll move forward to public hearings. First, which is item 9A, it's an ordinance amending Chapter 5, the Flagler County Code of Ordinances relating to animals.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
we have received some late advice and concerns from the American Kennel Club. I would recommend that we postpone this particular item until next meeting in order to give them an opportunity to meet with administration to discuss their concerns.
Postpone or table?
Postpone until the next meeting.
Okay. We need a motion for that?
Mr.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
With comment.
Sure.
It just alarms me that these people are so concerned that they come in and write the emails after we've convened the meeting tonight. That's not very good information on their part to give us information after we've already convened the meeting. So, but I agree we should take it into consideration. But in the future, it's nice to get that kind of stuff before the meeting. And this has been on the agenda for over a week.
Yes, sir. I would have recommended a different approach, but it is what it is, and I do think that they're a respected organization, and we at least should have the discussion so that the decision can be completely informed.
I agree, but I think they were asleep at the switch. It's been out there for 10 days. So.
Okay. I would concur. I would support the postponement. I for sure it created some doubt in my mind when I had read those emails earlier today. So, okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we postpone deliberation on this or consideration of this ordinance until the next meeting.
We have a
Second.
second. Okay. Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Item 9B, it's an ordinance amending Article 1, Chapter 13, the Flagler County Code of Ordinances, prohibiting the destruction and removal of natural resources and the unauthorized use of public lands. And who will be presenting that?
Yes, as you can tell, this addresses a number of issues that have been working within administration about the appropriate rules that should govern our lands in terms of prohibiting unauthorized uses and destroying public resources, natural resources that we have on those properties. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
mean, there was very little change. It was just a few sentences, if I remember right, correct?
Yes, we did. I mean, it's more than just a couple of sentences. There are some concepts in there that we're implementing. This was processed through our land management department, obviously the administrator, and we put in the legal words to achieve the objectives that they wanted, that they identified for us as the drafts people.
Commissioner Hanson?
Did this rewrite, is this driven by the berry picking issue? Is that?
In part.
It's one. There are a number of issues that have come up with regard to use and abuse of natural resources at our monthly county managers meeting. I fully expect at least 2 of our municipalities to adopt this ordinance themselves. It gives our folks the tools to enforce a wide variety of things that impact our natural resources, which are the property of the public.
Any other questions, commissioners? Okay, I'll open this item up to the public. Anyone from the public wish to comment on item 9B? Seeing no one approach the podium, I'll close public comment, bring it back to this commission for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve item 9B, the ordinance for County Code of Ordinances prohibiting destruction and removal of natural resources.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. That motion carries unanimously. Okay, 9C is an ordinance amending Article 1, Chapter 23, Flagler County Code of Ordinances, regulating the use of county parks. Any presentation there?
This is the essentially the same objectives of identifying land management and the administrator identifying issues that they wanted to have addressed, and so we have translated those into the appropriate words in the ordinance. You notice that we address special use areas. Those are specific areas where activities that are otherwise prohibited can be allowed. They're subject to the county administrator's discretion. Also, authorizing the prohibition of certain activities and revising the penalty provisions. This is just basically a cleanup of this provision, of these provisions from the county code.
That's the one I was confused with the prior ordinance about more cleanup
okay.
language, and that's what, hence my comments before. Commissioner Sullivan?
Yeah, I looked at this quickly, but does this have anything to do with the problem we almost ran into when we were going to have the endurance races and we were going to set fires, do some significant changing to the terrain in order to bring that in? Was any of that thought of that?
No.
Okay.
No, this is really more, this is more directed toward general rules. So, for example, in that situation, it was somebody asking us to license their activity, and we had the power to say yay or nay. So this lets people know in advance that they can't, for instance, people who are archers, they can't go set up at Graham Swamp or some other park that we have, or at Bing's, and start shooting bows and arrows. So it just codifies those kinds of provisions, and it also identifies, what you can't land at our parks. For instance, you can't land seaplanes, helicopters. These would be non-governmental. Can't land a hot air balloon without our authorization. Can't launch airboats from county facilities. So those are the kinds of things that are prohibited. Now, there are situations where the county administrator for an approved event is allowed. For instance, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example of one of our fields where maybe we do have an archery event, some sponsored archery event, and the administrator can decide that this area will be set aside for that activity.
Commissioner
Good.
Hanson?
Yeah, was this also driven by the more frequent use of drones, and can drones be flown in our parks?
We are actually preempted on drones, so that's why you don't see them mentioned in this ordinance.
They can or cannot fly drones in our parks.
We are prohibited from enacting any ordinance relative to the operation of drones. Preempted.
So the drone operators have to follow the FCC rules
Correct.
with respect to drone operations.
Correct.
That still doesn't answer the question. Can they fly a drone in our park?
It depends on what the FCC standards are. That you can't just declare what that is because they have different operational standards depending upon the area and the kind of tree cover, et cetera.
So if we've been preempted, we can't even go in and say, hey, you shouldn't be doing that.
I suppose if our operational people thought there was an FCC violation, we could probably bring it to somebody's attention. If I would say likely that if it was an activity that, I'm just going to guess, just based on the experience with the county, if the county park staff saw some sort of use that was interfering with reasonable public intended use, it would be brought up and it would be processed as such, and we would go to the authorities. Probably the very first person we would call is Mr. Seeger to tell us exactly what those FCC or FAA, pardon me. I've been saying FCC. Somebody said FCC and got me on the wrong acronym. It's the FAA.
All right.
It's the FAA.
Yeah. Okay. Any other
Mr. Chairman, if I may, if that's a big concern, you could also postpone this, and we could look at some language that prohibited any act that is unlawful under state or federal law in our parks.
I don't think that's necessary. The counselor there has said we've been preempted. I get it. So, thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other questions here from the commission, I'll open it up to public comment on this item. Anyone wish to comment on item 9C? All right, seeing no one approach the podium, we'll bring it back for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve item 9C, ordinance for Flagler County Code of Ordinances regulating the use of county parks.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that motion carries unanimously. Moving on to additional reports and comments. County Administrator reports.
No, sir, I have none.
Okay. Mr. Attorney?
None.
Making this too easy.
Wow.
All right. Commission action. Anything from commissioners that requires action this evening?
Yes, I have one.
Okay.
Over in Marineland Acres, every one of the streets has a sign on it, no parking. And there's a sign going into the neighborhood that says this is not beach access. However, there's one road, Rollins Dunes Road, that does not have no parking signs. It's the only road over there. And in order to fix that, in order to put the signs up, we need, as a commission, to modify that ordinance and say, do we need to modify the ordinance or just say we want the signs?
No, you need to have a consensus to instruct the county administrator to
put two
post
signs
that
up.
with no
Right.
parking signs.
And the problem is that since that's the only street where there are not these signs, they get inundated. It's inundated with cars. So I would like a consensus of the board to instruct the county administrator to put up two signs, one on each side that says no parking here to the beach.
Gentlemen?
I agree.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point.
Appreciate your guidance on it, Commissioner. So,
There you go.
We will do that. That's probably something I could have done but it's not a public safety issue, which calls clearly it's a public policy issue. And I try to refrain from creating public policy in the administrator's office.
Well, we just want to get more votes from the residents in there, sir, so, you know, give us some glory.
Right.
Yeah.
Make us heroes for once.
Okay, but thank you, Commissioner, appreciate that. Anything else for commission actions?
None.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to community outreach. This is our second portion. It's a 30-minute time period allocated for public comment for items not on the agenda. Again, each speaker is allowed up to 3 minutes to address the commission, and please approach the podium and identify yourself and direct comments to the chair.
Good evening again, George Mayo, Palm Coast. Regarding to the issue that Jack brought up before concerning county buildings that we have bought and in possession of and need to do something about. As Mr. Cameron stated, that buildings were looked at properly and et cetera before we bought them. But if I'm correct, in order to get a mold assessment, you could have somebody go and inspect the building, but a mold assessment is something totally different that you have to ask for. So just asking somebody to inspect the building does not necessarily including a mold assessment. And I've asked this commission once before to ask the county if we are interested in buying a building, property, et cetera, if it's a standing building, to include a mold assessment and not just a building inspection. And I think this would prohibit any further problems with all of a sudden we found out there's mold inside. But it has to be asked for. It is not just asking for an inspection, does not include a mold assessment. And I think that would mitigate everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayo. Anyone else wish to comment? All right, seeing no one approach the podium, I'll close the community outreach portion here. Any?
Yes, sir. He is correct that you have to order a specific mold assessment. These inspections were ordered by the former administration, and the issue that we have is not that there was mold that was not discovered, but there was serious water intrusion that specifically was addressed, and we were told that it was not a problem. So that is the issue that we're proceeding on, is a serious water intrusion that should have been discovered.
And disclosed.
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay. We're down to commission reports or comments. Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, just one short one. Commissioner Mullins and I attended the Police Athletic League Warriors football team picnic, and it was an enjoyable event. Food was great. God, food was really good. But it was good seeing the kids, and it was a good event.
Okay. Commissioner Sullivan?
Nothing to report.
I got a few things, and I'll zip through them real quick. Homeless update. We're still working on possible shelter locations. Don't worry about everything you hear in the news. I'll say that. We're evolving. There are some challenges we're having from a local resident going down and creating some chaos, but we're evolving from it. We'll have that worked out. We also had Mr. Hadid had the attorney from the city of city of St. Augustine come in and speak about some of the ordinances that they adopted, some that they liked, some that they didn't. After hearing the panhandling ordinance, I backed off pushing that because I don't think we have a panhandling problem like St. John's does and did. I think it's something we're going to look at, but there's some other ordinances that will address that issue that are better and less targeted for attack. So I think it's evolving in a good way. And I don't know if, Mr. Hadid, you want to tell them or comment on anything with the meeting, public safety meeting, but it was a lot of good response from people and information that was relayed.
I don't have anything to add, but we've made an outline and we'll discuss it and work with it to figure out what we might want to do from what we've learned from that presentation.
Okay. And then animal ordinance, I do, appreciate us looking at that. We're getting a lot of challenges on the west side with animals, but it's going to evolve, and as we mature as a county, it will. Medical services, I'm hearing it over and over again, and I'm going to continue to push hard for mental health and labor and delivery, some of those services, so we can get ahead of it, not when we finally bust out with the numbers that everybody says we need, we're behind the scenes or behind the curve. Fiber and broadband, we had our first fiber task force meeting today. I'll let Helga update, but a phenomenal meeting. USDA came in and we had some very huge breakthroughs. It was a meeting with private citizens, public officials. So it was both county and private citizens meeting with the USDA, and there is some really good stuff coming out. And I think we're real close to being able to get something going there with bringing fiber to the west side, US 1 and west, where it just doesn't have the services and it qualifies for a lot of grants and a lot of our federal money back. Also, real quick, and I'll just touch on this because it's evolving. I had talked months ago about getting our kids more involved in the community, getting them involved in government and seeing it. And through talking to Mr. Dance on the school board and Miss Barbosa, Maria Barbosa, we've all kind of talked and communicated about a junior commission. And there's some more information that needs to evolve still. I'll be able to come back and update you. But having these kids where they can kind of mimic and solve some issues from the schools and work on problems throughout the county so they have a chance to learn what government is. And they can see it's not so easy up here. It looks easy from the other side, but there are some challenges that we face that are tough decisions. But I want to thank you, Mr. Dance, for helping me push that through. We definitely need that bridge to the commission with the kids because they are our future. They're our future workforce. So really appreciate that, and I think it's going to be a great thing as it evolves. And Ms. Barbosa, who's not here, working so hard with it. That's all I've got. And other than to reiterate what Greg said about Commissioner Hanson said about the thing Saturday, it was phenomenal. And a war hero gave a great story about his service in Iraq and the injury the disabling injury he got, and it was really good. Seeing that, just the rallying him out, and it was good food. I think I ate probably 5 or 6 of those sandwiches, so great stuff. Thank you.
Do you have something else, Commissioner Sullivan? This says you want to speak.
Oh,
I'm just trying to do my job.
Yeah, he's just creates.
Okay. I have nothing for this evening. I'll just pass. So go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I move we adjourn.
Thank you. We have a second on that?
Second.
We're adjourned. Thank you.